The classic Western bar brawl is a complete myth. In reality, the biggest danger in a saloon wasn't a bullet. It was a rule you didn't know. Why was the whiskey deliberately poisoned? Why were U.S. soldiers banned? And what was the one rule everyone had to follow? We're revealing 5 strange things that never made sense about Wild West saloons. This is the brutal, regulated, and filthy truth behind the Hollywood legend. Let's start with the #1 strangest thing: the stench behind the swinging doors. But before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. Forget the impressive wooden establishments from the films. The original saloons were merely makeshift affairs. In a fresh mining settlement or a new railroad stop, the drinking house was frequently the first enterprise to appear, perhaps just a primitive canvas tent, a sod-walled hut, or a lean-to constructed from any discarded materials available. As a settlement expanded, these would be replaced by plain timber constructions, often featuring a facade designed to appear more substantial than reality. This was an effort to suggest permanence in a transient environment. Solely in the most prosperous towns, such as Deadwood or Tombstone, would you encounter the genuinely ornate saloons. Yet the most striking thing you'd observe upon stepping inside was the odor. It was a dense, unpleasant mix of old beer, inexpensive whiskey, unclean bodies, and heavy smoke from cigars. Each time the doorway swung open, a new cloud of dirt and waste from the dirt road swept inside. The noises were distinct as well. Musical accompaniment was a rarity. The dominant sounds were the low hum of talking, broken by the harsh, rattling coughs of ill individuals. To the eye, the interior was simply filthy. The flooring consisted of coarse planks, strewn with a coating of sawdust to soak up slopped drinks and spit tobacco, forming a constantly moist and grubby ground. The counter itself was tacky, and the entire space was poorly illuminated by sooty oil lamps. Even the legendary swinging doors weren't for making a statement. They were there for airflow. The saloon of the Wild West was filthy in the most straightforward way, making these packed spaces perfect hotbeds for lethal illnesses. The dangers present in a saloon were frequently unseen and considerably more perilous than any shootout. For the typical frontier settler, bathing was a significant and rare undertaking. Water needed to be carried manually and warmed over a fire. In an ordinary household, each person would bathe in the same modest tub of water, beginning with the man of the house and concluding with the baby. By the time the last person was finished, the water was frigid and murky. The state of dental care was equally poor. It was common for individuals to use a knife blade to dislodge food from between their teeth. Should a tooth become abscessed, the community barber, or sometimes the blacksmith, would extract it using tools, with a swallow of whiskey serving as the anesthetic. The settlements themselves were no more hygienic. Proper waste disposal systems were non-existent, so garbage and sewage were simply discarded on the outskirts. This muck was perpetually carried indoors on boots into the congested saloon. Such conditions created an ideal habitat for vermin such as lice, flies, and cockroaches. This combination of terrible cleanliness, absent public health measures, and infestations turned the saloon into a remarkably effective venue for transmitting sickness. Cholera could race through the patrons via shared, unrinsed drinking vessels. Tuberculosis propagated readily in the enclosed, hazy atmosphere. Smallpox, another fiercely contagious sickness, would have spread with incredible speed as well. In truth, a patron stood a much greater chance of perishing from an illness contracted in the saloon than from a gunshot wound. Aside from the tangible grime and sickness, a different form of corruption was widely consumed: the alcohol itself. The whiskey consumed by cowboys was seldom a refined, mature bourbon. More commonly, it was a vile and hazardous mixture known by terms such as firewater, red-eye, or snake poison. Authentic, aged whiskey was an uncommon indulgence. To satisfy the need for inexpensive drink, saloon owners manufactured imitation spirits. The foundation was typically inexpensive, unaged grain alcohol. To transform this into a whiskey-like substance, they included caramel for color and a wad of chewing tobacco to provide a potent kick, along with a jolt of nicotine. Yet the most concerning components were outright toxic chemicals. Formulas for counterfeit bourbon required additives like sulfuric acid and creosote, a potent chemical used for preserving timber. The end result was a brutal concoction that could cause a person to become severely sick. The label, snake poison, was an accurate portrayal of its impact. This was not an isolated issue. It represented a pervasive trade operating with virtually no oversight from authorities. Even the beer was a letdown. Lacking any means of cooling, it was presented at ambient temperature, frequently stale, and lacking carbonation. And similar to the whiskey, it was occasionally adulterated with addictive substances to create an illusion of greater potency. The saloon's notoriety as a den of iniquity was well-deserved, yet the truth was considerably less dazzling than its cinematic portrayal. To begin, the iconic barroom brawl, a massive, chaotic melee, is almost purely a creation of the movies. Actual saloon violence was isolated, personal, and far deadlier. It was usually a swift, savage, and fatal confrontation involving 2 or 3 men, sparked by a gambling debt or a personal slight. Acknowledging this peril, numerous settlements required customers to surrender their guns at the entrance. This elementary measure of gun control guaranteed that most conflicts were resolved with bare knuckles rather than gunfire. Gambling served as the primary pastime. There were honest dealers, known as square games, who cultivated a standing for fairness, and there were also itinerant cheats who exploited newcomers using rigged decks and other deceptions. The part women played is also frequently misrepresented. A clear line was drawn between saloon girls and prostitutes. Saloon girls were performers. Their duty was to sing, dance, and converse with lonely customers to encourage them to purchase more drinks. For numerous women, this was a route to economic self-sufficiency. Prostitution was a distinct and significantly more perilous profession. In opposition to the idea of a chaotic space without order, the saloon functioned as a strictly ordered space, operating under firm, unspoken codes and clear boundaries of segregation. The saloon served as the central gathering place for the white male frontier population. It was a location where cowhands, miners, peace officers, and criminals could all intersect. The distinction between an officer of the law and a criminal was frequently remarkably blurred. Yet this social mixture had definite limits. A woman of good standing would never enter a saloon. Exclusion based on race was also standard practice. Patrons of Native American or Chinese descent were not permitted. Although black men constituted a notable portion of the Western populace, they too were typically forbidden from white established saloons and consequently founded their own. One unexpectedly banned group was the enlisted U.S. Army soldier. Many regular saloon-goers held an inherent contempt for the military uniform and the control it symbolized. Among the permitted group of customers, conduct was dictated by a severe etiquette. Discretion was paramount. A man was never questioned about his personal history, and a strong tradition was the duty to purchase a drink for the house. Declining a drink that was offered to you was a grave affront. The idealized saloon presented by Hollywood is an invention. The factual account is that the genuine saloon was a coarse, dirty, and malodorous center for contagion. It dispensed toxic alcohol to a chosen group of patrons who were ruled by inflexible social customs. This gritty truth, nonetheless, is a far more genuine and potent emblem of the American West than the legend that has supplanted it. It exposes a society comprised not of straightforward heroes, but of actual individuals fighting to endure in a severe environment. So the next time you see those swinging saloon doors in a movie, you'll know the truth. It wasn't a stage for glamorous gunfights, but a brutal, calculated struggle for survival. This makes you wonder, what other historical truths that we take for granted are completely wrong? Let me know your guesses in the comments below.